The first contact. In the vast expanse of space, where stars were born and died in cycles too complex for even the most advanced alien civilizations to fully comprehend, there existed a small, vibrant planet teeming with life. Earth. A tiny blue marble in the universe, yet it was a world that had ignited the imagination of its inhabitants in ways no other species had managed. Humans, with their curiosity, relentless ingenuity, and unyielding spirit, had always believed that they were not alone in the cosmos. They had looked up at the stars for centuries, wondering what lay beyond the familiar boundaries of their world. What kinds of beings lived out there? What stories were waiting to be discovered? The U.S. Odyssey, a ship designed for deep space exploration, had set out from Earth's orbit 6 months earlier. Its mission was simple: to explore the nearby star system and gather data. The crew was a diverse mix of scientists, engineers, and dreamers, all united by the shared goal of discovering the unknown. Captain Clara Simmons, a seasoned explorer with a sharp mind and a steady hand, had led countless expeditions into the unknown. But this mission, the Odyssey's deepest venture into uncharted space, felt different. She couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was out there, waiting. The crew had spent months charting asteroid fields, studying gas giants, and investigating various celestial phenomena. Yet, as the Odyssey approached a remote star on the edge of the system, an anomaly appeared on their radar, a massive object, far larger than any ship or natural formation they had ever encountered. "Captain, you're going to want to see this," Lieutenant David Lee, the ship's communications officer, called out from the console. Clara stepped toward him, narrowing her eyes at the holographic display. What she saw was nothing like the stars they had been used to. It wasn't just a bright spot in space. It was a massive structure, angular, metallic, and seemingly artificial. The object was unlike anything humans had built, and what made it even more perplexing was the fact that it was emitting a strange electromagnetic signal, a pattern that didn't match any known natural phenomenon. "We've found something," Clara murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is this a ship?" "We don't know, Captain," Lieutenant Lee replied. "But it's certainly not anything we've seen before. It's enormous." The crew was silent as they watched the massive object drift in the vast emptiness of space, its purpose unclear but its presence undeniable. It was a mystery that beckoned them forward, compelling them to uncover its secrets. The Odyssey slowly approached the object, its sensors working overtime to gather as much data as possible. As they neared the unknown structure, Captain Simmons gave the order to prepare for communication. "We're going to need a way to communicate with whoever, or whatever this belongs to," she said, her eyes never leaving the holographic image. "Prepare the universal translator, and try to pick up any signals." Hours passed as the crew worked tirelessly to decode the strange signals emanating from the object. The first few attempts were unsuccessful, filled with static and incomprehensible patterns. But then, something changed. A voice, a clear, calm voice, crackled through the speakers. "This is the vessel Cledron 7, representing the Confederation of Worlds. Identify yourselves." The crew exchanged stunned glances. The voice spoke in perfect English, but the source of the transmission seemed entirely alien. The implications of the message were staggering. They were not alone. Clara's heart raced. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the excitement and awe building within her. "This is Captain Clara Simmons of the U.S. Odyssey, from Earth. We come in peace and wish to establish contact." There was a pause on the other end of the transmission. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before the voice responded. "Earth," the voice said, with a slight edge of surprise. "Interesting. We have heard of your species. You are primitive, yet you have survived longer than we anticipated. Very well, Captain Simmons. You may approach. We will meet you in person." The message ended, and the crew looked at one another wide-eyed. They had made contact, truly made contact, with an alien civilization. They had no idea what awaited them, But they knew one thing for certain. This would be a defining moment in the history of humankind. As the Odyssey continued its approach, the crew braced themselves for what would come next. They had no idea whether the aliens would be friendly or hostile, whether they would see humans as equals or something to be dominated. But Captain Simmons had an instinct, one she had honed over years of exploration. Humanity's resilience, its ingenuity, and its ability to adapt would be their greatest asset. "We need to be ready for anything," she said to her crew. "Prepare for a full briefing. We don't know who they are, but we're going to show them what humans are capable of." The unseen enemy. The U.S. Odyssey continued its slow approach toward the mysterious alien vessel, now identified as Cledron 7, its immense size casting a shadow against the starry expanse. The crew could only watch in silence, their eyes wide with both awe and nervous anticipation. This was a moment none of them had ever imagined. Contact with an advanced alien species. There was no playbook for this, no guide to tell them how to proceed, how to navigate the complexities of first contact. "Captain, we're in range," Lieutenant David Lee reported, his fingers hovering over the controls, his voice laced with the same excitement as the rest of the crew. "We're receiving another transmission." Clara stepped forward, her heart racing. She had prepared for this moment her entire career, but nothing could prepare her for the reality of it. She took a deep breath and spoke into the microphone. "This is Captain Clara Simmons of the U.S. Odyssey, from Earth. We are ready to receive your transmission." The silence stretched again. A crackling noise filled the comm system. Then the same calm voice echoed through the ship. "We have received your message, Captain Simmons. You may proceed to dock at the designated landing bay. You will be met by representatives of the Confederation of Worlds. We welcome your species." Clara exchanged a glance with her first officer, Commander Ethan Park. Both of them understood the magnitude of the situation. They had no idea what the Confederation was, or what kind of beings they were about to meet, but the words had been clear. They were welcoming Earth with open arms. That, in itself, was a miracle. "Lieutenant Lee, get us into docking position," Clara ordered. "Commander Park, please assemble a landing team. We'll be the ones to make first contact." "Understood, Captain," Commander Park responded, his voice steady, but filled with the weight of what lay ahead. As the Odyssey slowly maneuvered toward the docking bay of Cledron 7, the crew's nervous energy turned to quiet focus. They had trained for moments like this, preparing for encounters with alien species, practicing diplomacy, studying xenobiology, and crafting contingency plans for every possible scenario. But none of their training could have prepared them for the reality of stepping onto a ship that was as foreign as it was massive. The alien vessel loomed ahead, its surface shimmering with a strange metallic sheen, unlike anything human technology had ever produced. It didn't have the graceful curves of the Odyssey, or the clean lines of Earth-built spacecraft. It was jagged, angular, almost organic in its construction. The way it pulsed with light, like it was alive, made Clara's stomach tighten with both awe and unease. "I've never seen anything like it," Lieutenant Lee murmured. "It's like the ship itself is a living organism." "Keep your focus, Lieutenant," Clara said, her tone firm. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." As the Odyssey docked, the crew donned their formal uniforms, each member of the landing party trying their best to hide their nervousness. Commander Park was the first to step forward. He was a tall, calm man, an experienced diplomat who had spent years preparing for this very moment. He gave a final look to the crew before addressing Clara. "I'll lead the team, Captain. We'll need to keep calm, make sure we're respectful, and establish trust," he said, his voice steady, but with an undertone of uncertainty. "We don't know what they want, or if they see us as equals. There's a chance they've been watching us for longer than we know. We need to be careful." Clara nodded, trusting her commander's judgment. She had always believed in humanity's resilience, their ability to adapt, but this was something entirely different. This was unknown territory, and there was no room for error. Good luck, Commander. Stay safe. We're all counting on you." With that, Commander Park led the team out of the Odyssey and toward the airlock of the Cledron 7. The massive door opened slowly, and the crew stepped into a sterile, dimly lit corridor that stretched far ahead, disappearing into the unknown. The walls of the corridor seemed to shimmer as they walked, reflecting their movements like an infinite mirror. The first thing they noticed was the lack of sound. The air was still, and the only noise was the soft echo of their boots on the metallic floor. It was as if the entire ship was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The crew exchanged wary glances, but they pressed forward. They rounded a corner, and there, waiting for them in the center of a vast chamber, stood the aliens. They were unlike anything the crew had expected. The beings were tall, easily over 9 feet, humanoid in shape, but with smooth, translucent skin that shimmered in the dim light. Their bodies seemed to glow from within, as if their very presence was alive with energy. Their eyes were large, with no visible pupils, just an endless expanse of light, like stars swirling within a nebula. Clara's breath caught in her throat. These were not the cold, calculating machines or the insect-like creatures she had imagined. These beings had an otherworldly grace, a beauty that defied understanding. The leader of the group stepped forward. It was impossible to determine their gender or even what constituted their anatomy, as their bodies seemed fluid, almost ethereal. The being's voice filled the room, its tone calm and yet commanding. "Welcome, Captain Clara Simmons. We are the Egrath, emissaries of the Confederation of Worlds. You are the first of your kind to reach out to us. We have watched your species with great interest." Clara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the overwhelming emotions flooding her. "We come in peace. We've spent centuries wondering if we were alone in the universe, and now we know we're not." The Egrath's large eyes focused on her, studying her with an intensity that felt almost intrusive. "You are not alone, human. But be warned, your species' survival has been marked by one trait: defiance. You fight wars, you destroy your planet, and you test the very limits of your environment. Why?" Clara took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Because we have never stopped fighting for our survival. For our future. When we fall, we get back up. We innovate, we create, and we push forward." The Egrath seemed to consider this. Their translucent skin shifted, and Clara could have sworn they were absorbing the information, processing it like a computer. Finally, the leader spoke again. "We will see if your species can adapt to a larger universe. If you prove worthy, there is much you can learn. But if you fail..." The voice trailed off, leaving a heavy silence. Commander Park stepped forward, his voice calm and respectful. "We are ready to prove ourselves, to learn, and to build a future where our species can coexist with others. We only ask for a chance." The Egrath's eyes glowed brighter, as if something inside them had been sparked. "You may have that chance, human. But know this, there are others in the galaxy who would not hesitate to destroy you if they see you as a threat. You will have to prove that you are more than just fighters. You must show that you can be something greater." With that, the first contact between Earth and the Confederation of Worlds had been made. But the true test, Clara knew, was just beginning. Their journey into the unknown had only just started, and the galaxy would soon learn what humanity was capable of. The weight of the universe. The Cledron 7 was a marvel. As the crew of the U.S. Odyssey ventured deeper into the massive alien vessel, it became evident that they had entered a realm beyond their wildest imaginings. The Egrath, who had introduced themselves as the emissaries of the Confederation of Worlds, were not only unlike any species the humans had encountered before, they were unlike anything humanity had even conceived of. Their ship, though alive with strange energy and form, was built with an elegance and functionality that seemed both ancient and ahead of its time. The walls shimmered with patterns that seemed to pulse to an unseen rhythm. Everywhere they looked, the ship was in motion, as if it was not merely a vessel but a living entity, responding to the presence of its inhabitants. The technology integrated seamlessly with the organic structure, creating an environment that felt like stepping into the mind of a being far older and more powerful than any human had ever encountered. Captain Clara Simmons couldn't shake the sense of awe as she walked through the corridors of Cledron 7. Her mind was racing, trying to process the magnitude of what was unfolding before her. They were standing in the heart of an interstellar empire, surrounded by beings whose power and wisdom dwarfed that of anything Earth had ever known. Yet, as the Egrath had made clear, their welcome came with a challenge. "We are the Egrath," the leader of the emissaries had said, their voice reverberating in the cold, sterile space. "Your species has been watched. You have potential, but you have also proven time and time again that you are a volatile and unpredictable force. This galaxy is full of dangers, some of which we know, and others which we have only begun to understand. If you wish to be part of the Confederation, you must first prove that you are worthy of it." Now, as the Odyssey's landing party followed the Egrath through the twisting, luminous halls, Clara could feel the weight of those words pressing down on her. They were being tested, but the true nature of that test was still unclear. Were the Egrath truly offering humanity a chance to join the Confederation? Or was this merely an elaborate ruse, a way of testing their limits, exposing their weaknesses, to determine if they were worth keeping alive? The journey through the ship had been quiet, save for the occasional soft hum of distant machinery and the deep, resonant voice of the Egrath leader. They led the humans to a large chamber, its walls covered in intricate alien symbols that seemed to shift as the group moved closer. In the center of the room stood a massive crystal structure that glowed faintly with a light that seemed to be alive. The Egrath motioned for the crew to gather around. "This is the heart of the Confederation," the leader explained, their voice like the wind through the branches of a vast tree. "It is the nexus of knowledge, where all the histories of the worlds under the Confederation are stored. It is not a database in the way you understand it. It is a living, breathing entity capable of learning and evolving." Clara and her crew watched in silence, captivated by the sight of the glowing crystal. The way the light shifted within it seemed almost like the ebb and flow of thought, like the collective wisdom of countless worlds. It was mesmerizing, and Clara felt a deep sense of both wonder and trepidation. "The Confederation does not merely govern the galaxy," the Egrath continued, their voice echoing off the walls. "It unites the diverse species, binding them together through mutual understanding and shared growth. But unity comes at a cost. Each species must contribute its knowledge, its resources, and its spirit. Those who cannot adapt, who cannot evolve, are left behind." Clara could feel the gravity of the situation pressing in on her. Humanity had always prided itself on its ability to adapt, to innovate, to survive against the odds. But the Egrath were speaking of something far deeper than technological advancement. They were speaking of cultural and intellectual evolution, of a species' ability to contribute meaningfully to the greater whole, to join an interstellar community of civilizations far older and more advanced than Earth. "What do you ask of us?" Commander Park spoke up, his voice steady, though Clara could see the tension in his eyes. "You've made it clear that humanity has potential, but what does that mean for us? How do we prove ourselves?" The Egrath's eyes glowed faintly, their expression unreadable. For a moment, the chamber was silent, the air thick with the unspoken weight of their decision. Then the leader stepped forward, their translucent skin shimmering with a soft glow. "The first trial will be one of understanding. You will be tested on your ability to adapt and interact with those around you, both within your species and beyond. There are other races in the Confederation who view humans with suspicion. Some see you as a potential ally, while others see you as a threat. You will have to prove that you can bridge these divides, that you can find common ground where others see only conflict." Clara's mind raced. She understood the stakes. Humanity's place in the galaxy was at risk. This was more than a test of technology or military might. It was a test of their character, of their ability to rise above their history of division, their tendencies toward conflict. Could humanity really prove itself worthy of such a great responsibility? Where do we begin? Clara asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty that gripped her heart. The Egrath's leader stepped aside, allowing the crew to gather closer. You will be taken to a world within the Confederation, a neutral ground, where you will meet representatives of other species. There you will engage in a diplomatic mission to resolve an ongoing conflict. It will not be easy. It will not be without risk. But you must succeed, or humanity will not be allowed to join the Confederation. The choice is yours. With that, the leader gestured toward a nearby door. The crew followed, their hearts pounding in their chests as they realized that this was no simple diplomatic mission. It was a trial of their very souls. They had been given a rare opportunity, but one that came with tremendous responsibility. As they left the chamber, Clara turned to Commander Park. We don't know what we're walking into, but we have to be ready. We have to show them what humanity is truly capable of. We will, Captain, Park replied. We will prove that humanity belongs here, in the stars. And so, as the U.S. Odyssey departed from Cledron 7, bound for a world far from Earth, the crew braced themselves for a trial unlike anything they had faced before. The fate of humanity, the future of their species, would be determined not by their weapons or their technology, but by their ability to adapt, to collaborate, and to overcome the deep divisions that had once threatened to tear them apart. In the vastness of space, humanity's greatest challenge was not survival. It was unity. The trial of unity. The U.S. Odyssey had been traveling for days, the deep space between Cledron 7 and their destination stretching endlessly before them. As Captain Clara Simmons gazed out into the cold expanse of space, her mind couldn't escape the weight of the Egrath's words. The trial had been set in motion. Humanity's future in the galaxy depended on their ability to navigate the complexities of galactic diplomacy, to prove that they were not just fighters and survivors, but builders of lasting relationships. The planet they were heading to was called Viridian, a world once on the brink of war. Its inhabitants were the Vunari, a species known for their high intellect and technological prowess, but marred by a deeply ingrained rivalry with the neighboring species, the Darnax. The Vunari were a species of tall, slender beings with silver skin and sharp, angular features. They spoke in a melodic cadence, their culture based on logic and precise reasoning. The Darnax, by contrast, were shorter and stockier, with deep green skin and broad features. They were a fiercely proud warrior culture, driven by honor and strength. For centuries, the two species had been at odds, constantly vying for control of resources on Viridian's surface. But now, the situation had reached a tipping point. The war was no longer contained to words or skirmishes. It had become a full-scale battle that threatened to engulf the entire planet. The Vunari and Darnax were locked in a stalemate, and the rest of the galaxy was beginning to take notice. If the conflict continued, it could spill over into a larger galactic war, one that might involve the Confederation and all the species within it. Clara's mind raced as she thought of the magnitude of their mission. They weren't just diplomats now. They were mediators, peacemakers. Their task was to stop a war before it could spiral out of control. As the Odyssey entered the planet's orbit, Clara stood on the bridge, staring out at the green-blue world below. The Vunari had requested their assistance, but the Darnax had agreed to the peace talks reluctantly. The two factions were so entrenched in their beliefs that the idea of compromising seemed impossible. Clara knew that the first steps would be crucial. The tension between the two species was palpable, and she could feel it in the pit of her stomach. If they couldn't navigate this delicate situation, humanity's place in the galaxy would be in jeopardy. The Egrath had been clear. Failure was not an option. "Captain, we've entered orbit," Lieutenant David Lee said, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "The Vunari have sent a shuttle to meet us." Clara nodded, trying to steady her nerves. "Thank you, Lieutenant." Commander Park, Gather the team. We're heading down to the planet." A few minutes later, Clara and Commander Park, along with a small team of diplomats and security officers, were aboard a sleek Vunari shuttle descending toward the surface of Viridian. The shuttle's exterior was made of a reflective material that shimmered in the planet's atmosphere, giving it the appearance of a ghostly apparition as it sliced through the clouds. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she looked down at the planet's surface. Viridian cities were sprawling, built into the natural landscape, but there were visible scars from the ongoing war, craters from orbital bombardments, smoldering fields, and abandoned settlements. The Vunari had been hit hardest, their technological cities damaged beyond repair in many places. The Darnax, though more resilient, had also suffered from the drawn-out conflict. As the shuttle touched down in a wide clearing near the capital, Clara felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it. The fate of a world, and perhaps the fate of humanity's place in the galaxy, rested on the success of these peace talks. The Vunari delegation greeted them in a large open-air hall, its walls made of a silvery metal that glistened in the sunlight. The leader of the Vunari, a being named Zelen, stood at the front, tall and elegant, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to analyze everything in their path. Their voice was calm, measured, the way Clara had expected from a species that prized logic above all else. "Welcome, Captain Simmons," Zelen said, their tone neutral but respectful. "We are grateful that your species has come to assist us in ending this conflict. We know that humanity has a reputation for resilience, but I must ask, are you prepared to face the true nature of the divide between us and the Darnax? It is not something that can be solved easily. It will require more than just words." Clara nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're here to help. We understand the gravity of the situation, and we will do whatever it takes to bring an end to this war." Zelen studied her for a moment, their gaze unwavering. "You speak of ending the war, but what does that really mean?" For the Vunari, peace is a matter of logic, of finding the most efficient and reasonable solution to the conflict. For the Darnax, peace is a matter of honor, of proving that they are not weak, that they have not been conquered. Can you find a way to meet both of these needs? The question hung in the air, and Clara's mind raced. She had known that this would be difficult, but the complexity of the situation was even greater than she had anticipated. The Vunari and Darnax had fundamentally different views on what peace meant, and finding common ground was no easy task. "I don't know yet," Clara said, her voice soft but firm. "But I know that we have to try." At that moment, the Darnax delegation arrived. The members were large and muscular, their deep green skin almost blending into the shadows of the hall. Their leader, a towering figure named Grathar, walked with a measured pace, his steps heavy with authority. His eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto Clara as he approached. "So, you are the humans who believe they can solve this." Grathar's voice was low, almost a growl. "I'll tell you this, Captain. Peace will come only when the Vunari learn to respect the strength of the Darnax. They will not get away with their insubordination. We will not allow it." The air grew thick with tension as Grathar and Zelen exchanged hard stares. Clara could feel the animosity between the two leaders and the weight of the history that had built this conflict. Both species had suffered for so long, and their pride was all that remained. The challenge before her was enormous. How could she bridge this gap? How could she convince these two proud species that there was a path to peace? "Grathar, Zelen," Clara began, her voice carrying the weight of the moment. "I understand that both of you have been through immense suffering. Your people are at war, and each side believes that they are in the right. But war has cost you both more than you can imagine. It has drained resources, destroyed families, and fractured your societies. I know that peace will not come easily, but it can come. It has to." The two leaders were silent for a moment, the tension between them palpable. Grathar's eyes narrowed, but Zelen seemed to consider her words. The silence stretched, and Clara's heart beat in her chest as she waited for a response. Finally, Zelen spoke, their voice calm but determined. "Perhaps there is some truth in what you say, Captain, but peace requires sacrifice, and the Darnax must be willing to make it as well." Grathar let out a deep growl but said nothing. Clara could see that the road ahead would not be easy. The war between the Venari and Darnax was about more than just territory or resources. It was about pride, honor, and identity. But Clara Simmons had learned one thing over the years of exploration and conflict. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or its weapons. It was in its ability to find common ground, to compromise, and to unite in the face of adversity. If humanity could teach these two species that lesson, perhaps they could find a way to end the war and prove that peace, true peace, was possible. As the two delegations stared at one another, Clara's voice rang out, steady and unwavering. "We will find a way. Together." And with that, the first steps toward peace had been taken. Though Clara knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, the trial of unity had begun.